Hey everybody. Um, Full moon in Cancer just hours away. I'm going to try and make this pretty quickly. I know when I say that I don't, but I kind of have to. And I have to have my phone on because I'm expecting a phone call from the hospital as well. So this full moon in Cancer is the first full moon of 2025. And look, let's be realistic and just acknowledge, in fact, how difficult it is going to be for a lot of people. Um, Look at what's happened in LA, California, um, Mars retrograde closest to the Earth, in its fall position, um, and out of bounds. Now, when a planet is out of bounds, it goes haywire. And clearly that's happened. I did post something on the community section, which most of you, I think, saw, relative to when you place the zodiac around the equator and you get the longitude degree, the part of the zodiac around the equator that corresponds to LA, California, um, equates to the position of Mars. So that's something that one of my teachers, best friends, has always paid attention to. That is placing the zodiac in longitude around the equator and seeing where that lines up in different countries with a specific planet and what that might mean. And it also happened during when the COVID first started. When that story first started. In that part of China. I think it was Saturn Pluto that sat on that point as well. So this principle, this theory actually works. It shows up pretty big things, and that's obvious. So Mars is very in a very difficult position. Mars is a planet of anger, planet of war. Yes, a planet of willpower. Yes, it has a lot of different layers. There's no question about that. Um, and we can look at it, esoterically, on an evolutionary level, spiritually, and so on and so forth. But at the end of the day, in this third dimension reality, Mars typically, for the most part, is a very problematic energy. It's just an inherent, difficult planet, and especially for those born during the day. Um, Even in Babylonian astrology, Mars was known as a figure called Nergal. And that particular divinity, his prime motivation was to create plagues and basically kill people. Like, he was a pretty heavy divinity, and he was the lord of the underworld at those times prior to Pluto's discovery. And there's very good reason for that, because he married Ereshkigal, who's the queen of the underworld. Just in the process of doing a webinar with Rumen Kolev, he did a webinar on these divinities, Nagal and Ereshkigal, which is actually Venus and Mars. Once I've completed that, I'll share some insights, but I'll probably be mostly encouraging you to also check out that webinar from him. It's pretty amazing. It's a webinar that goes for about 4 hours, and it's all on the cycle of Venus and Mars. That is where they are in the sky, relative to each other, when they come together, when they move apart. And the astronomical phenomena of their positions actually reflects the myth of their story. That is, when they met in the underworld, what happened when he took off, when he came back. There's this whole story about them. So anyway, look, Mars is a very difficult planet. We can't make Mars Venus. Mars is not Venus. Mars is Mars. And at the moment, with this full moon in Cancer, Mars is retrograde, in fall, out of bounds, and conjunct this full moon. Um, one thing that I like to remind people as well is that people make the assumption because the moon rules Cancer that that position is fantastic because it's its so-called rulership position. And it's, for the most part, it's not fantastic. It's actually a very difficult place for the moon. Sorry, I have to have this on because, as I said, I'm expecting a phone call from the hospital. Um, when the moon is in Cancer, whether that's natally or whether it's a full moon or whether it's just the moon transiting through the tropical zodiac Cancer, uh, it, emotionally, it stirs things up to the absolute maximum. Now, what's Cancer about? Cancer is about personal security, feeling safe in our life, in situations we are involved in, whatever it is. It's primarily just about safety. Cancer does not have anything invested in becoming conscious. Cancer just needs to feel safe, period, no matter what is going on. So when there are things that are taking place in our life that evoke some type of insecurity, and the moon is in Cancer, well, all that stuff that's going on, it just gets completely amplified. And put Mars there, next to the full moon, two completely opposing energies. Mars is an archetype or a planet that pushes energy out, and the moon is an absorber. It absorbs energy, right? It's more akin to feminine energy. It's closely connected to emotions, feelings, security, and so forth. So the moon does not feel safe with Mars right next to it. It's that they're just incompatible. That's why, Mars in Cancer is in its fall. That's the moon's sign, right? So it even logically makes sense. How is Mars going to thrive in the moon's sign? It's just simply not possible. They're not compatible. So I'm bringing these details up to remind us of just how difficult Mars in Cancer is. And with this full moon, Mars being right there, this just amplifies everything. Now, what are the issues that come up? Obviously, the primary issue is security or the lack of it, and deep sense of insecurity that can rise through certain situations that are occurring in our life. Now, the people in California, a lot of them have been through hell, right? But like I said in a recent video, I just did a small video the other day on Facebook, and I said, it is tragic what's happened in California. There's no question about it. My heart goes out to the normal people. Perhaps that's not the right term. To the people that don't have a lot of money, that just, have a home, and that's all they've got. And now they've lost that, and all the animals, there's so much heartache going on there. But then, Gaza has been experiencing this relentless, um, horrific force for a year now. And that's forgotten about from so many people. So there are a lot of things going on, in different places of the earth, and there always is. But there are certain places on the earth that will be a lot more focused upon, and cataclysmic events will rise in quite a magnified manner, perhaps because of even just the what I said at the beginning, which is when you place the zodiac around the equator, and that shows us the longitude, meaning the degrees of the zodiac. That's what that means in a nutshell. You're putting the whole zodiac around the equator, okay? And you're looking at the longitude degrees. In other words, I think it was 117 degrees out of 360. When you stop at 117, that equates to 28 degrees of Cancer. And that particular zone that line goes straight to that part in California. So that's not a random thing. That's not a coincidence. So Mars being in such a difficult place and being out of bounds, meaning that energy of Mars is uncontrollable. And now that can be in certain places of the earth, which it has been in California, and that can be in certain individuals' life, even outside of that zone. I've got massive issues going on with my family at the moment, which is why I've got my phone on. My brother, who's young, had a heart attack just a couple of days ago. And I'm not going to go into the complete rant of this, but let me just say this because this is important. Unfortunately, he fell into the trap of taking those liquid things that they inserted into people's bodies the last 5 years. You all know what I'm referring to. I'd rather use this language to describe it. He took five. That's caused a heart attack. It's not a conspiracy theory. It's well documented now that a lot of people who did take that particular thing have ended up um, with heart problems. And unfortunately, yeah, I have my brother who's in this predicament, and there's no reversing it. It's just just have to deal with it now. So I'm pretty gutted at the moment, and pretty angry as well. Because look, at the end of the day, he's made his choices, and I can't control what he chooses to do. I can't control what anybody chooses to do, nor do I want to. But I do care about people, and especially my family. And when I have some vision and some insight of something that they are doing that I know is going to result in potentially something really harmful, it's very upsetting to me when I can't help them see what's going on. And that's what happened here because I warned him. I told him, please don't do it. Please don't do it. Okay, this is him now. I'm going to have to pause. Yeah, so my brother's had to have a stent put into his heart because the arteries, one major artery was completely blocked. Before he took those liquid things into his arm, he'd never had any problems with his heart. He doesn't have a history of heart problems. I know what's happened here. And I know there's many people in this situation. And I've seen it in other people's lives. I've seen it over the years. I know one person in particular who was a very, very close family member who actually passed away. That particular individual had 6 of those things. So for those that are still in denial, I don't really have anything to say. Anyway, this is life, and we just need to deal with one thing at a time. I think what's really coming up for me out of this, because it's the full moon in Cancer, which always brings up family stuff for me. It's just so bizarre, it's the exact same hospital that my dad was in. It's the exact same hospital where I was there with my dad while he was in a coma, sleeping next to him for 7 days, did not move. I was right by his side, and now I see my brother there. So it's a pretty surreal kind of experience for me at the moment. And I don't even know how to explain what I'm feeling, so I'm not going to bother. No one's really interested in that anyway. But I just simply mention it because this is what it's brought up in my situation and that I had to answer my phone. And as soon as I finish this in a few minutes' time, I'm going straight to the hospital. This full moon, let's just actually bring up a chart. The other interesting thing that I'd like to also mention is in terms of the Babylonian zodiac, which is not exactly the same as the sidereal zodiac, there is a difference. It's not a great deal of difference, but there is a difference. Anyway, the moon, the full moon, in the Babylonian zodiac is actually in the constellation of Gemini. And here I have, my brother. Mercury, Gemini corresponds to siblings. So literally hours before the full moon, my brother's just had a stint put into his heart. There'll be other people who will have perhaps issues and matters that come up with siblings in some way, shape, or form through this full moon being in the constellation of Gemini. Yeah, obviously it's going to be different for everybody. I'm not going to focus on the Babylonian component right now. It's just too much for my brain, but I really just wanted to highlight that issue to show, that actually the Babylonian zodiac, the fact that the moon is in the constellation of Gemini does have actually tremendous significance. So let's now look at the tropical zodiac. So there's the moon at 23, it's 23:59 of Cancer. Full moon, of course, is always opposite the sun. Most people who are here are aware of that, but anyway, it's an important little detail to bring up. So there's the full moon, moon opposite the sun. There's Mars, retrograde, closest to the Earth, out of bounds, and in fall. And there's Chiron, basically squaring the sun and the moon. So squaring the full moon, creating a T-square. Chiron recently went direct. So what do we have highlighting in this full moon cycle? We have two very difficult energies, Mars and Chiron. Yes, Chiron is the healer, absolutely. But Chiron is also the deepest wounds, the deepest fears, the deepest aspects of ourself that we need to heal. So Chiron squaring this full moon is just not an easy full moon. And Mars being so close to the full moon, it's going to aggravate this full moon. It already has. It's already doing it. And I think it's just the peak of it, as it approaches over the next several hours, it's just going to intensify, and for certain people in certain situations, that will, illuminate and blow things up completely. And again, I have another side issue with family stuff going on where I'm not going to explain the details because it's private, but let me just say this. There's a lot of things that are being revealed to me at the moment that have been hidden from me. There's been deliberate lies. This has nothing to do with my brother in hospital. It's other family members, really hurtful things, really deceitful things. It's just shit, basically. But it's interesting to come into illumination of it as well. When we come to realize something, especially something that is hurtful or difficult, there's, first there's the process of feeling hurt, disappointed, angry, whatever it is. But at the same time, the flip side to that coin, at least at least now you have awareness. Awareness gives us some sort of empowerment. Why? Because we may make certain decisions now that we have clarity on certain issues, whereas before we were in the dark. And in this case, I was deliberately in the dark. So I expect a lot of, family eruptions, family dynamic eruptions to really be amplified during this full moon, and it can really test us, all of us individually. It can bring up some really painful things. Chiron squaring the moon, really painful things from family. Chiron is square the full moon in Cancer and Mars. There's a lot of potential, anger here. There's no other way to put it. What's the advantage of this, if there is any at all? Just simply that we can become more aware of certain things, and also we can try to make maybe certain decisions that will clear certain things for us, Healing has always got to do with clearing things as well, right? So, it's an opportunity to heal some things as well. But I expect the wounds that come up are going to be pretty fucking deep, basically. I mean, I guess if we were going to bring up something that is softer, it's Uranus. Uranus has a sextile, an exact sextile to the moon, and therefore trine to the sun. Now, with Uranus, there's always an opportunity for some sense of freeing ourselves up from something that has kept us in chains or shackles, something that has kept us restricted, something that has kept us limited, something that has kept us stagnated. Now, that could be, particular family dynamic patterns that we've been stuck in, and we just get activated and triggered. We go back, we revert back to the same pattern because we haven't healed the Chiron factor. We don't heal the Chiron factor in one lunation cycle, or even at our Chiron return, or the Chiron cycle, which is all these, well, it depends what sign Chiron was in. You can have the first Chiron square Chiron. I think you can have it just before 7 years of age, and then in some cases, some people have it for the first time when they're about 21, because Chiron has a very peculiar elliptical orbit. So it spends weird times through the zodiac. It might spend a couple of years in one sign, and then it might spend like 10, 15 years in another, something like that. It might not be exactly that, but I'm just drawing a contrast. So the point to that is that we don't heal our Chiron wounds just like that. It's a process. It's part of our experience here and part of our life journey, So here we have a full moon, the first full moon of 2025, square Chiron, conjunct Mars. These are all very intense dynamic energies that will be very painful for certain individuals, and for others maybe not as much. But the fact that Chiron is direct as well, during this full moon, it might be that what is amplified or what is illuminated at this time, we are able to actually proceed forward with how we are trying to work with what's come up, how we are trying to heal it. When a planet is direct in motion, for the most part, and of course it always depends on the planet and a few other different things, but generally speaking, when a planet is moving direct, there is an implication there that we can proceed forward relative to that archetype and whatever it's bringing up. Versus when Chiron is retrograde, or any planet that's retrograde, that's a different journey, that's a different process that very much connects to reflection, introspection, and an inward journey. But Chiron is now direct, so this might just be an opportunity to really proceed forward with something that has been troubling us. The Uranus, of course, as I was saying before, can bring a sense of freeing us up from something. In this case, it's absolutely got to do with family. I mean, it's the Capricorn Cancer axis we're talking about here, and that is the axis that corresponds to parents and family dynamics. So we can either be freed from something, liberated, And that might just be because we've come to know something that we didn't know before, but it helps us move on. Or it can bring up shock and trauma as well. Even though it's a trine and a sextile, it's still Uranus. I mean, the sextile definitely would, elude more towards an opportunity because sextile aspects generally will bring up an opportunity. But Uranus always has that shock factor attached to it as well. So it might come up as a shock, but then it's an opportunity. It becomes an opportunity because we make it that as well. All these energies, have their descriptions and characteristics, but it's not. We just need to remember that we have a free will. We are choosing to act and respond according to our own level of awareness and consciousness, emotional state, and so forth. But we are also working in alignment with what's there. What's there? What's there is here. That's all I have to say. Um, this has been a difficult start for 2025 for me personally and for many, many people. I had one of my students who was in hospital as well. She had quite a bit of a scare. Fortunately, she is okay, and she's just now returned to being home. So she was in this journey for the last couple of weeks. Um, and, I felt very concerned for her. As soon as she was about to be released and go home, then the in comes in the situation with my brother. It just seems to have been one thing after another in the first 13 days of January. But that's what happens in life. We are constantly tested with our will, our spiritual will, with our ability to initiate, with our ability to become more conscious and more aware, um, to decide where we're going to direct our energy. It's difficult, but our spiritual will and initiation is always being tested. And when I say tested, what I mean is it's always an opportunity to see where we are in our life and how much we've grown and how much we actually care about soul and spirit and our connection to the divine. For me, that's always been the most important. Always. Yes, I have other aspects of life, and yes, I've enjoyed my life through the years in the world out there, so to speak. But nurturing the connection with the source has been primary for me, even in my darkest days and even in my happiest days, whatever. Now, a lot of people don't care about that. They're not interested. That's fine. There's no judgment here on that. Um, but in just the way I think and the way I live and the way I work, I this is constantly on my mind. So when I'm looking at the phenomena of the movement of planets, I'm thinking about this connection. And for example, I'm in the process of putting a workshop together for the cycle of Venus, her Hellenistic cycle, Babylonian astrology, and also the upcoming Venus star point in Aries. So I'm doing a combination of the two. I've chosen 5 people, by the way. So those are the 5 people that will be with me. They know who they are. But I've had to just put that aside for now because I just need to focus on my brother, um, at least for the next few days, and just see how he recovers. He's just had a procedure this morning. with the stent being put into his heart. So, I never usually sign off by saying happy full moon, because I've always found that phrase too simplistic and a little bit fake as well. I don't think it's so much about happiness or unhappiness, because happiness and unhappiness is just a state that fluctuates. It comes and goes, even many moments throughout the day. And in the bigger picture, it really doesn't mean very much at all. It's just part of the human condition, that we experience these fluctuations. So I guess for me, it's more important to maybe just say, well, I hope this full moon illuminates things for you that help you on your path, especially on your path of healing whatever it is you need to heal in your own heart. And if any family matters come up, that you can work through that. The family matters that have come up for me, which involve not distant family members, very close family members. It's so disappointing what's come up and what's happened there, but it's a constant disappointment with this one individual, just constant BS basically. And I said this in my 10-minute video on Instagram and Facebook. I absolutely fucking hate liars. Particularly people who lie consistently in order for their own benefit and have no conscience about it. And that's a lot of systems and a lot of people, sadly. Anyway, we just need to keep doing the work that's important for our heart and our soul. And, we simply have no control of anyone around us. That's 100% truth. Not my opinion, it's just a fact. See you all soon.